So welcome everyone, and as you can see you have your microphones off and I've turned your chat function off until the end of the event when you'll be able to join us for chat. But just for the official function, we're going to have your chat function so that you can just chat with me as the administrator, and you won't be able to chat with each other until the end. But I'd like to welcome everybody to this inaugural Avid Reader event. A bunch of people are here, so I'm admitting them. So welcome to this inaugural Avid Reader event, which is the launch of the fantastic Mirandi Riwoe's Stone Sky Gold Mountain. If you haven't got your copy yet, there is a link that I shared at the beginning, and there'll be a link at the end to purchase it. It's an amazing looking book. So that's the book at the moment. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm meeting on Aboriginal land. We're all, if we're in Australia, meeting on Aboriginal land. In my area, it's the land of the Yagara and the Turrbal people as the traditional owners. And I would like to start by paying my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to any other elders who are joining us today by this amazing technology, and also to acknowledge that you are all meeting on Aboriginal land if you're in Australia, and it will be different traditional owners in different areas, so I'd like to acknowledge that. And I'd also like to start by saying it's an incredibly wonderful experience to be hosting this very first event that we have in a virtual space, and that I appreciate that it's new technology for me, and it's probably new technology for a lot of you. So I hope it's easy to use. We're going to start off the event with a bit of a preamble and a speech by Aviva Tuffield, who is the publisher at UQP, and who has put together, this book, has really done an amazing job with this book, which I don't know if you can see it out there, but it's all flashy and sparkly and has little gold bits, and it looks just as beautiful as it is inside. I've read this book. It got me through the beginning of this pandemic madness, and it was just such a joy to read. So without further ado, I am going to ask for Aviva to step up to the microphone and to have a few words for us. So thanks, Aviva.
Thank you, Chrissy, and thank you everyone for coming along. It's I feel very emotional. It's in this time of social isolation and pandemic, it's actually really moving to be part of this. So I too would like to acknowledge first up that I am zooming in from the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. I'd also like to thank the inestimable Avid Reader bookstore for all that they are doing to support authors, publishers and readers during this terrible time. Avid's commitment to its local community and to the literary world generally is beyond compare, and is a testament to the importance of independent booksellers in connecting us all. We mustn't lose these businesses, and each of us needs to do everything we can to help them at this time. Now moving on to the incomparable Mirandi Riwoe and her novel Stone Sky Gold Mountain. Well, where to start? In fact, I'll start with expressing my long-standing admiration for Mirandi's writing, which stems from way before I had the privilege of publishing her. I'm a fan of her short stories, and I adored her novella, The Fish Girl. So I started pestering her, in a good way of course, about what she was writing next and where she might submit it for publication. I clearly remember meeting up with Mirandi at Merlot Cafe near UQP and trying to rein in my pushiness, which is quite hard for me, and subtly interrogate her about her publication plans, when suddenly Mirandi turned to me and said, "Aviva, I feel like a girl sitting here waiting for a boy to ask her out." Well, I can take a hint. And it's been a match made in heaven ever since. Mirandi has such an incredible work ethic to go with her boundless talent. This new novel, Stone Sky Gold Mountain, surpassed all my expectations. It is beautifully written, deeply researched, powerful and political, and full of unforgettable characters whose fates you truly care about. Mirandi's novel also does something all good literature should. makes us see the world anew, and fosters empathy. It encourages us to imagine what the conditions experienced by those early Chinese migrants to the Queensland goldfields were like, and to reconsider the complex multiracial society into which they arrived. The early reviews have been raves. A 5-star one in Arts Hub stated, "In its exploration of race, language, privilege, class, exile and identity, Riwoe's novel is transcendental and transformative. Stone Sky Gold Mountain deserves to be widely read, discussed and reviewed, not only because of its resurrection of a little known portion of our history, but also because it's beautifully written with a lyric sensitivity and a feminist sensibility." Congratulations, Mirandi. I know these are challenging times in which to be launching a book, but this novel is going to make its mark, don't you worry. We at UQP could not be prouder of you. Happy launch day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aviva. That was really fantastic. And I do echo your sentiments. This is an incredibly beautiful book, well written and incredibly researched. So congratulations from me as well. I'm now going to throw to the wonderful Christina Olson, who is going to officially launch the book. So if you happen to have a glass of wine by your side, now is the time at the end of this speech is to raise it and to chink in your solitary confinement, chink it against the computer screen as we launch this into the world. So I'd like to introduce Christina Olson, who is a journalist and the award-winning author of the novels Shell, In One Skin and The China Garden, and 2 works of non-fiction, Boy Lost, and Kilroy was here. And actually Deb Kilroy just got out of hospital having gone through the worst of her coronavirus infection. So that's really fantastic, that news today. So everybody please welcome the wonderful Christina Olson.
Thanks, Chrissy. Hello, everyone. I too would like to acknowledge and absolutely thank the traditional owners of this place where I'm broadcasting from. These people have always cared for this place, this very storied place. Will always be their land. It'll always be Aboriginal land. Well, those of you who know me will know what a technophobe I am, and will be wondering why someone who can blow up a photocopier and disable a computer just by walking past them is doing this very important job, especially tonight. Well, the answer is pretty simple, really. This is a bloody brilliant book. I would have risked all kinds of technical breakdowns and malfunctions to launch this book tonight. It is brilliant and it is groundbreaking. Mirandi's taken on one of Australia's most difficult and enduring problems, I think. It's amnesia around our collective histories, those of race and racism, of privilege, of class and identity. She's flayed our body of acquiescence, our denial, our collaboration in a great forgetting. This book will lead you through our collective amnesia around those issues, particularly as they relate to the 19th century in the remote northern goldfields of Australia. And it won't let you unknow some things ever again. It's true, I suppose, that we haven't had a lot of information about the specific circumstances and places that have come under Mirandi's gimlet eye in this book. We know about the great European explorers of Northern Australia. We know about those who assumed ownership of vast tracts of the north, destroying Aboriginal culture as they went. We may even know bits about the Northern Gold Rush itself, but there's been precious little detail about the circumstances of the arrival of Chinese people on those goldfields, why and how they came, their interactions with Aboriginal people. Still, this lack of knowledge may have been willful. Perhaps we've never really wanted to know. Mirandi has brought us a very tough and very visceral story about those goldfields, about Chinese people and their lives there, and about the locals. but she tells this tough story through characters so engaging, so recognisable and authentic that we don't realise, not at first, the weight of what they've come to say, what Mirandi is looking in the eye. In fact, she has become the great explorer of what happened here, discovering and dissecting race and racism, as I said, privilege and class, exile and identity, injustice and misogyny. All the things this country is built on, but seen through the microcosm of this particular time and this particular place in North Queensland. Each of these characters, I have to say, is utterly themselves. They are not types. To me, they're more than three-dimensional. I can see the way they move still. I can hear them speak, even the baddies, of which there are several. But the main characters are a Chinese brother and sister, whose names I'm going to try to pronounce correctly, Lai Yue and Ying, who have fled poverty and slavery in China to try to recoup their family's losses. Ying has come to the goldfields disguised as a boy. This probably doesn't need much explanation to the women listening out there. We understand instantly why a young girl in a male-dominated, violent, filthy and lawless place might do this. It's unspoken and summed up in this character. But hell, let's speak it. She wouldn't survive. She wouldn't get work. She'd starve. She'd be at the mercy of the violent and the mad and the unrestrained. And this is the lot, as it turns out, of the two other female characters, Meriem, a lower class girl from Queanbeyan, and servant to Sophie, a prostitute. Both are vulnerable to the lawless mood of the goldfields and the town. The endurance of these women and what they suffer is emblematic, I think, not just of the times, but of Mirandi's preoccupations as a writer. Her fabulous and the Stella Prize shortlisted novella, The Fish Girl, as Avid has already mentioned, was also concerned with historically silenced characters, women who've faced exploitation and exile and cruelty, women fighting for agency and for dignity to live their own lives in their own way. She might just be talking about 2020. Mirandi takes a very sharp scalpel to colonisation, to the colonialist mindset, to white supremacy and arrogance and the violence that often accompanies them. In The Fish Girl, and now in beautiful book, Stone Sky Gold Mountain, she's concerned with characters silenced by gender, by race and class, and also by shame. She asks questions about how women then and now operate in a world where safety is not guaranteed. She asks questions about the hierarchy of race. In this book, the locals, the Australians, see the Chinese as low on the evolutionary scale, but both locals and some Chinese people treat Aboriginal people as lower than that. There must always be someone on the rung below our own. And what does that say about us? It's a rhetorical question, of course. We have our own hierarchies even now, in the way we've treated and still treat our First Nations people, the way we treat asylum seekers, the way we treat anyone whose skin is not lily white. In this book and in our own times, we have a collision of forgotten histories, some willfully forgotten. But books like this one insist on remembrance. And it isn't just about women's histories. There are shocking reminders here of what men, many of them immigrants and newcomers, suffered for their difference. Some of the scenes in this book might have come from yesterday's or last week's news. I think of the scene, Mirandi, in the Chinese store, in Jimmy's shop, Gentle Jimmy, when a group of rancorous and offensive men, Mirandi names one of them Just Grey Shirt, and we know immediately what he looks like, shoulder their way in and begin insulting and intimidating Gentle Jimmy with racist slurs and demands. The simmering violence, I have to say, is terrifying. The scene, though, felt really familiar to me, as if I'd lived through it, which I haven't. But then I realised that, of course, I've seen such scenes on the news, seen them reported in court stories recently. Some things just don't change. These scenes are made all the more powerful by the privileging of the non-Anglo voice. We don't see this often. We see things as if for the first time through the eyes of others, from their point of view. I have to speak briefly about, although I'd like to speak longer, about the evocation of landscape and place here. Mirandi brings us her character's surroundings in rich detail and through the thick heat of the tropics. Anyone who's spent time in the north, and I have, will feel it on their skin. The cloying humidity of the coast and the dry dust and stillness of the plains. And both landscape and characters are told with a lyricism that will fold you into the story page after page until you're thinking in their speech rhythms, in their phrasing. When I put the book down, and I've read it twice, this is what I missed, being party daily to the wonderfully crafted dialogue, to the dreams and the thoughts and the dailiness of these people. They, and the writer, translate their worlds through this rhythmic language, beautiful rhythmic language, so that when you come to the end, you too kind of think in this rhythm and speak in it. It's an extraordinary achievement. In one of her interviews after her shortlisting for the Stella, Mirandi said, "I write of the things that have moved me." And it's plain that this story, these people, haven't just moved Mirandi, but become part of who she is. This happens with the best writing, I think, when empathy and compassion and an incisive mind inform character and narrative, and the lessons learned in the writing move in with us as writers. They sit at the desk with us and change us. This book will change you too. I urge all of you out there to read it and order it now. In the strange new world we live in, changes daily, but what this book gives you might alter you in the best way for much longer. And I want to add too that this book and many others being published during this strange time will not have the advantages that, say, books published last year had. The ordinary advantages of bookstore appearances, a book tour and festivals. It's an incredibly tough time to promote a book and an incredibly tough time for bookshops. Even libraries are closed and can't lend you the book. So please buy several copies of Mirandi's books and of other books. If you've lost your job, as many of us have, if you're broke, save up for it. We're all going to need good books over the next few months to cheer us and to sustain us. So Mirandi, huge congratulations, huge admiration and love for you and this book, my friend.
Oh,
Thank you,
Chris Olson. And I think jazz hands for Chris Olson.
Thank you.
I think now it's probably a chance to just, before we get Mirandi to step up and read and speak, is to, to charge our glasses and to congratulate her. So if you have, your water bottle or your glass of wine with you, I'd like to propose a toast to this book. It is the first book that we have launched in this pandemic times. It's a terrible, terrible time for a book so great to be published into the world, and this is indeed a great book. Congratulations, Mirandi Riwoe.
Congratulations, Mirandi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. My picture keeps on stopping. So hopefully.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm really, 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 really moved by all the kind things you've said. Aviva, Chrissy, thank you. I mean it. Anyway, I'll get on with it. First, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live. Here, it's the Yagara and Turrbal people, but also the traditional custodians of the land right across Australia, because of course, I think people are coming in from other parts. Again, thank you so much for those beautiful speeches, Aviva and Chris. Very moving, thank you. I'm going to read from this because I'm really terrible at any form of public speaking. So first of all, I'm going to read from the first chapter of my book. I don't need to describe it anymore because Chris did such a beautiful job, much better than I could have done. In this part, Ying is, she's the sister, and she's at the goldfields helping her brother, and that's it. And they're at their camp by the Preamble River. Ying sips the porridge from the lip of the bowl. She glimpses something black in the rice, and pressing her eyes shut, she takes another mouthful, imagining that it's a cube of preserved duck egg. She can almost feel its jelly melting on her tongue. Only 3 more mouthfuls, painstakingly measured mouthfuls, and the porridge is finished. Lowering herself onto the stool in front of her brother, she lifts the straw hat from her head. She holds her plait in her right hand and leads her head back towards him. The metal of the razor scrapes across her scalp, as warm as blood. When Lai Yue is finished, Ying runs her hand over the bald front half of her head. Her fingertips search out the line that divides the skin of her scalp from where her queue begins. She turns to glare at Lai Yue. You always take too much off, it looks ugly. She unravels the plait so she can free the shaved hair that hangs loose from her scalp. Her brother shrugs. I have to make it straight. Sometimes I shave too closely in one place and then I have to straighten up the rest. And anyway, you're supposed to look like an ugly boy. You're not a pretty girl here, Ying. She breathes in, feeling the band tight about her chest. Her breasts are no bigger than shrimp dumplings, but still she has to hide them. She's seen the look in the eyes of some of the men when they catch sight of the white women in town. She doesn't want to see that look directed at her, not here, not where lust will be mixed with fury at her trickery. A grin lifts Lai Yue's lips. Not that you are ever a pretty girl, Ying, even in China. His words sting, yet she's pleased to see that smile. She can't remember the last time he looked happy. He's only 19 years old, but there are creases in his forehead that weren't there before they came to this place, and the skin under his eyes is pale, baggy. The bruise on his cheek has faded a little, is no longer the livid purple of an eggplant, and the cut above his lip has nearly healed and looks like nothing more than one of the many other wrinkles or creases scored into his skin by the land's cruel sun. They weren't quick enough the last time a rowdy bunch of whitefellows descended upon them. Didn't hear the drunken cries of roll up, in time to save their 2 pickaxes, the sturdy metal pan they'd traded Ying's winter coat for, and the last of the rice they'd hidden deep in the soil. One man, as gingery as a fox with thick, shaggy eyebrows, swung the spade against Lai Yue's head and called out something in his devil tongue before chasing after the others. Their camp, nearly 60 Chinese men, had scattered in all directions like a swarm of locusts shaken violently from a tree. Ying is learning their white language swiftly, but not quickly enough to catch words shouted in anger, in threat. Thank you. And now I'm just going to make a little speech. Originally, when writing Stone Sky Gold Mountain, I was hoping to write a little historical book about a multicultural love story between a white Australian girl and a Chinese boy. Because I'm Eurasian, I've always been fascinated by these stories from the past, imagining the disappointments or the heartbreak from being forced apart by social norms at the time. But just as fascinating, though, is reading of those couples and families who made it work, even in the 1800s. But once I explored the history of North Queensland and the gold rush, I realised that there were more complex elements that would need to be in my story. So my novel kind of grew from there. One person has been supportive of this project from the very beginning. Thank you so much, Aviva Tuffield, my wonderful, kind, hardworking publisher. It meant a lot to me that Aviva always had such trust in me and my writing. Wrestling a novel into place is always a fraught time, and Aviva, you having my back the whole time was hugely reassuring. I really believe it helped me push myself as a writer. Thank you so much, Aviva, for publishing my novel and for all your encouragement. Vanessa Platt, my poor editor, who I like to call the author whisperer. Thank you for bullying me in the gentlest possible way into making those changes and additions. As other writers will know, once you finish writing a book, you never want to revisit it ever again. But Vanessa, you definitely helped me make my book better. Thank you. Thank you also to everyone at UQP, especially Louise Corniget. You've worked so hard for me and my novel, and I'm so sorry that so many of our plans this year have crumbled. I'd like to thank the brilliant writers and writing community of Brisbane. I want to say it's the best writing community, but I don't want to offend anyone from down south that might be on here. A lot of my friends, other writers, helped me along the way with this novel. My writers group, Emma Doolan, Kathy George, Andrea Baldwin, and also Cass Moriarty and Sally Piper. They each read swathes of this novel in progress. Special thank you to my great friend and great writer, Laura Elvery, who, even though she was trying desperately to finish her own book, still made time to read anything I sent to her in a panic. This is a book of siblings, and I'm always, always thankful for mine, Liam, Damien and Tina. Mum, hopefully she managed to follow the links and she's on here. Wave, Mum, so people around you can see you. Thank you, Mum, for believing me and for pushing me on and for reading all those first drafts, you poor woman. Papa, who's probably forgotten about it and is cooking noodles at this very moment in his kitchen, thank you for being such an inspiration, always such an inspiration in so many ways. Dave, Bianca, Jet and May, big love to you. Please never write a book about me. Huge, huge, hugest thank you to all of you for coming to my Zoom launch. I'm really, really touched that you've made the effort to join me in these troubling times. What was looking to be a pitiful Friday night has turned out to be fabulous. Thank you so much for all your support, and I hope you enjoy my book. Biggest thank you to Avid and Chrissy and Fiona for being so proactive in supporting all your writers and readers at this time. Please, everyone, while you're stuck at home, buy as many books as you can from Avid or from your local bookshop. Usually we'd be going off to Chop Chop Chang's now to have some noodles and wine. So I suggest we all go to the kitchen and after questions, Chrissy's going to tell us how to do questions, and we cook up some noodles and drink all the wine in the house. But thank you so much for coming along. Love to you all. And now you can ask questions. And while you're getting questions ready, I'm going to show you my anxiety guinea pigs.
I'm going to actually get everyone to, I'm going to unmute you all so we can all do a big woohoo. So you're all unmuted. Congratulations. Congratulations, Mirandi. Yay. Well done. Mirandi. I've just muted. Oh, sorry. I just muted everybody. Was it? Someone was just speaking, but I think it's going to be pretty hard to take questions when everybody is on like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ask everyone if there's any questions, and I will find. There's a few comments. Mirandi, are you still there, Mirandi? Mirandi, can you hear me? Oh, as I've muted everybody, sorry, I'm going to unmute everybody now.
Hey, Jackie.
Jackie,
oh, sure do.
Oh, that's probably a mistake. Mirandi, are you still there amongst the crowd?
Jackie,
oh, lovely.
The gang's all here.
Big shout out to Meg. I want to say hello to Meg, Mirandi's mum. Meg.
Hi, Meg.
I'm here.
Mirandi, can you say hello? So that we can see
The camera's there.
They are related.
You're making
Hello, everyone.
I had to blow my nose.
So funny.
To make it easier for me to take questions, I've just muted everybody. I'm just going to try and find Mirandi amongst this giant list of people so that I can unmute her. And next time I'll know better than to unmute everyone till the very end. But now we know. So I'm just scrolling through a list of 180 people. No, there's not, sorry, 118 people to try and find Mirandi. And I can't find her. There you go. So this is obviously not the way to do it. So what I'm going to ask everybody, if I can't find Mirandi, is to just, if everyone can try and be really, really quiet. Have you ever asked a group of 118 people to be really, really quiet? So that I can actually see Mirandi and that Mirandi can answer your questions. I'm just quickly going to check this list in case I can find her. Oh, there's a filter. Great. It's Mira, I think. There we go. Got you. I've unmuted Mirandi. Are you there, Mirandi?
Hello.
Yay!
I was just saying I've got a sniffle now because you all made me cry.
It was really lovely.
I never cry. I never cry.
So I've got some questions for you, Mirandi. One of them is from Cassie Hammer, who says, oops, I've lost it now. What were the research challenges that this book presented?
I guess I was given a fellowship with Griffith Review to write the first bit of, or some of the novel. And I knew I couldn't do that until I'd gone to the landscape of where I'd set it. So I guess the first problem was trying to find where I was going to set it. Because obviously a lot of the stories about the gold rush come out of Victoria. So I did a lot of research down there in their museums, Immigration Museum, there's the Chinese Museum, Victoria, Melbourne's great for that stuff. But then I looked, the more I researched, the more sort of north I went, there was like, I think Kinky and then a bit further up and then further up, and I was looking around Cairns, and then I found Cooktown and Maytown, doesn't really, it doesn't exist anymore. It was a flourishing town at the time. Like I always say, it had a lemonade factory. I mean, that's flourishing to me. And there's nothing there now, just some plaques, where shops used to be that somebody's put in lately. So I guess the biggest challenge for me originally was that I knew I couldn't, or I didn't feel like I could start writing it until I'd been there. So, and that's what actually the fellowship helped with that as well, was the trip out there that I went with my husband. We got a 4-wheel drive and we camped there, we got bogged. And that was probably the original biggest challenge, apart from just the, how irking it is to do research in like a library and just really dig through all the stuff, which just takes a long time to soak up information. But I'd already knew that from the crime fiction that was set in Victorian London. I already knew the depth that you needed to wade in to be able to then put pen to paper. But I found with this one, I really needed to see the area first.
That's amazing. You've got a lot of other questions. I'm just going to ask you another one. So from Lauren Chader, Miranda, can you tell us how you walk the fine line between fact and fiction in the book? So how do you take fact and make it fiction?
Yeah, I think you got this question last night, Lauren. It is hard because you don't want to be didactic and you don't want to dribble on with everything you've been read, because you do read, as you would know, Lauren, you read so much interesting stuff, but you can't stuff it all in there. So I think maybe the more you write, the more you realise you can't stuff it all in there. And you just, as you would know, you just have to choose what can work with your character. Like if your character would actually have seen that or experienced it, not to cram in things that are just, because you think it's interesting. That's probably how I go. I try less is more, I reckon, because really do a lot of research, and there's a lot of stuff you hear, and there's a lot, and people tell you stuff too because they think it's interesting, and but it doesn't mean it fits into your book.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a problem with some historical fiction, is that cramming in. It's almost like showing off. I think the writer just needs to show that they know that they're comfortable with the era or whatever, without having to
Don't show it.
Bang it home.
Yeah. You've got a question from Meg Van, who wants to know how long you've been working on this book.
So I probably first thought about it because I was writing about Eurasian characters in Victorian London, looking at the first Chinese there. I then started to think about, I wonder about Australia, and that's when I first started to sort of piece it in my mind a bit. Would have been a few years ago, probably, but sitting down and writing it would have been 2 years.
Wow. Ian wants to know if you found it hard to get the cultural background relevant to Chinese workers at that time.
Cultural background.
So I suppose, was there enough information about the cultural kind of background of the Chinese workers? Was that easy enough to find that information in your research?
Now I do have this written somewhere. I met a fellow named James Singh when I was in Shanghai, and it was almost just such a huge coincidence. I thought maybe he was related to Billy Singh, who's well known. His great-grandfather, I think, was one of the first shopkeepers in Maytown. Like, it was a huge coincidence, and he had all the photos and the information and stories, like all just really interesting things, the everyday kind of things that had been handed down in his family, like stories. So that was interesting. Also, there was another book by a man named Tan Z. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But he wrote a memoir, a memoir of his time, of why he came to Queensland, that how horrible it was to walk all the way from Cooktown to the Palmer River. That's where I got the bit, like there's parts in the book where they, because they carry that load on the bamboo stick with the buckets and stuff, that it just becomes, so difficult that they start bleeding and tearing there, and then and all that information was from his memoir. So I think I got information from those. I'm just looking at my list, and I guess also part of it would be my father's Chinese, so some of it. Then you read historical works. Eric Rolls wrote 2 books, Sojourners and Citizens, and they're like huge, like documenting, like Sojourners is documenting like this big, documenting all, and like little writing, like documenting all the Chinese who came here and all over Australia. That book is amazing for information because he gets it from like newspapers and stuff. And then I would say lastly, my father's Chinese, so there were some parts that I was comfortable writing anyway.
It's so visceral. The book itself, when you read it, it just transports you to this place, which is probably what we need right now, is to be transported to a different world and a different place and to learn something new. And the characters are just so charming. I really think I do encourage everybody to buy this book. It is, and I'm not just saying that because I love Mirandi and I'm launching this event. I really enjoyed it, and I was finding it very difficult to read in this time of the pandemic. And this book just completely transported me. So if you're looking to get away from all of this, this is the book for you. There is another question, Mirandi. Who is that from? It's Ellen Van Neven has asked.
Hello,
Ellen. And she has asked, what is the hardest thing about launching a book during a coronavirus pandemic crisis? I think she wants to know so that when her time comes.
I guess, it was probably about 3 weeks ago, I said to my husband, probably my launch probably won't go ahead. And this is a few weeks ago. This is how quickly everything has just moved every day. And he was kind of like, oh, don't be silly, it'll be fine. That's only like end of March. And then I guess it was kind of devastating, but also, there are such horrible things happening at the moment that it seems also a bit silly to dwell on it, because there are more serious things. But silver lining, like tonight, like I think this is like, I still got to dress up. I'll be guzzling the Prosecco later. And I mean, unfortunately, we didn't all get together, but what I like is I think some of my writer friends down south have come on to listen, which wouldn't have happened. I think so. Actually, I really like this Zoom idea, and I think it might catch on. So I think hopefully, I did read today that they were going through businesses that are doing well and businesses that aren't doing well at the moment, and Dimmicks, sorry, but bookshops apparently, well, Dimmicks was doing well, in this time, even better than Christmas time, because I think people are buying books. So fingers crossed. I was a bit sort of down, like, oh, it's going to sort of pan in this sort of pandemic time, but there are bigger things. Day
by day, I think.
Have a Zoom one. It's so good.
So Carly Napier has said, what's the significance of the title?
Oh, okay. So Stone Sky Gold. The significance is that we finally found one after many months of trying. But Stone Sky, it was always going to have something with Gold Mountain, because Gold Mountain was the name of what they called Gold Mountain men when they went to California to the gold rush and came back. And Australia was New Gold Mountain, so New Gold Mountain men. And I was originally going to name it Gold Mountain Woman, because they're called Gold Mountain men. I was going to call it Woman. But then I added Lai Yue's character, so it couldn't just be about women. And Stone Sky is from a legend, a goddess. So the sky was Chinese legend. The sky was breaking, and she fixes it with pieces of jade, or different types of jade, which are 5 different colors or sources, from fire, water, wood, metal, and one other thing that's in my, all the things that are in my book. So so that's where the Stone Sky comes from.
That's fantastic. Look, I do want to leave a little bit of time now at the end, so that I can actually unmute people, and that you can interact as if this is we're letting you out to have your book signed. But instead of a book signing, we will have a kind of a connection of some sort on this Zoom. Now I'm going to just, as I do that though, I'm just going to put hopefully the link again for the book. So if you do want to purchase this book, there's the link. And do remember that wherever you are around Australia, if you buy over $50 worth, you get free delivery. And if you're in our special zones, there's a bicycle delivery service. And it's a bit of a lucky dip as to which staff will deliver it to you. But it's been, I'd like to thank Aviva Tuffield for choosing this book, and for then so carefully delivering such a beautiful piece of work. And I'd like to thank Christina Olson for doing such a moving speech. And I'd like to thank Fiona Stager for being just so flexible. It's been such a stressful couple of weeks for many, many people, and for us as well. And it's really wonderful to see that throughout all of that kind of stress, the tears, the worry, the fear, we can still celebrate these books that have taken years for the authors to put into the world. And to have Mirandi's book be the first one that we're celebrating in this way is very, very, very special. So I'm going to unmute you all, and we can chat to Mirandi in one cacophony.
Yay,
Yeah.
See the natural bamboo. Nice.
Congratulations.
In Japanese culture, they have a called
Congratulations, Mirandi. Hello,
Mirandi.
how are you?
Congratulations, Miranda.
Yay!
Smart again.
Ready.
Oh, my dad. My dad is on here.
Yeah. Papa.
Where's Papa? Where's Papa? Eugene Riwoe.
I can't see Papa.
He's got a picture.
Yeah. Okay, because I might get an email saying feedback, so I should do that.
There we are.
So if you can, yeah,
Oh, no, I
but
think
if you
that's
can
just
give
us.
me a photo, that would be great.
Congratulations, Mirandi.
Which as it is.
To them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want you all to smile, everyone.
yeah.
So we're not on camera.
Okay.
No, we just have to
Have a lovely evening.
Good on you,
guys.
Mirandi.
Hello, Christina.
Lots of love.
David.
Congratulations,
Hello, Tiny Jordan.
Congratulations.
Hello, Miranda.
Congratulations, Mirandi.
Hello, Helen.
Congratulations, Randy.
Bring on the Irish.
Hello,
Bring on the Irish.
It's a her, no, and the other woman, Fiona, who was just up a second ago, they're always her, but
Good
the
on
other
you, Randy.
Well done. Thank you. I'm looking forward to your Cheers, Mirandi.
Okay.
Congrats,
Thank you,
Mirandi.
everyone. Thank you
Nice
so much.
outfit.
Hi, hello, Kai.
Thank you, everybody, and Grace out and this incredibly beautiful book. Miranda, this has been wonderful, and thank you so much for this book.
Katie.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you.
Fantastic, Chrissy. Well done, Chrissy. Well
Thanks,
done.
Emma.
Thank you.
In time.
David, Rena.
Bye, Randy.
Well done,
Bye.
Miranda.